Welcome in, everyone. Or, more specifically, welcome to you.
Yeah, glad to have you here.
Yes, you listening right now. We know exactly the kind of thinker you are. You're someone who thrives on having your perspective challenged.
Absolutely.
You love taking a concept you thought was, entirely settled and discovering there's an entirely new layer of reality sitting just beneath the surface.
A completely different paradigm.
Right. You want the deep context, the paradigm shifts, and the nuanced analysis without having to wade through dense academic jargon to get there. Well, you are in the perfect place today.
We have a really custom-tailored deep dive today.
Right.
And it's going to fundamentally rewrite a core chapter of human history.
It really is. It's a profound shift in our understanding.
We're looking at a narrative that forces us to move entirely away from the textbook origin story we've accepted for decades. We're replacing it with something vastly more intricate.
And our mission today is to decode a 50,000-year-old secret that is quite literally hidden inside your cells right now.
Right at this very moment.
To do this, we're drawing from a brilliantly synthesized article published on a language and culture exchange platform called Say Habla.
Which is an interesting source, right?
It is. Now, you might wonder why a cultural platform is discussing genetics, but as we'll see, this genomic data is essentially the ultimate record of prehistoric cultural exchange.
Exactly. It's biological culture.
They recently highlighted a groundbreaking genomic study published in the journal Science. This came out in February of 2026.
And this research was led by a team at the University of Pennsylvania, guided by researcher Alexander Platt.
Right, and this study completely rewrites the narrative of human evolution. I mean, we've been taught for generations that the story of early modern humans and Neanderthals was one of brute biological survival.
It was a harsh war of the species.
Oh, right, where we expanded, outcompeted them, and they simply died out. But the truth revealed in this data is actually a story about complex social dynamics and deeply personal reproductive choices.
It highlights how advancing technology, specifically high-coverage genomic sequencing, allows us to read the past with a level of clarity we simply lacked even a decade ago.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing.
We're no longer just measuring fossilized skulls or cataloging stone tools. We are reading the chemical footprints of intimate social interactions from 50 millennia ago.
It bridges the gap between hard biology and ancient anthropology perfectly. But to really grasp the magnitude of what Platt's team discovered, we first need to set the baseline of what is happening inside your own body right now.
Which is my favorite part of this.
Same. So if you are a person of non-African descent listening to this, you carry somewhere between 1% to 4% Neanderthal DNA in your genome.
Right.
The source material points out that this ancient DNA is not just dormant junk code, it is actively working inside you today.
It's doing real work.
Yeah, it directly influences your immune system's ability to fight off modern viruses. It provides certain skin and hair characteristics that were originally adapted to help Neanderthals survive in the freezing ice age climates of Eurasia.
It even affects your susceptibility to things like blood clotting and common allergies.
Exactly. This isn't just distant ancient history. This is the reality of your daily biology.
Which is an incredible reality to process. You're walking around carrying the active genetic legacy of a human lineage that vanished from the physical Earth tens of thousands of years ago.
It's crazy.
And that 1 to 4% is scattered across your genetic map. But as researchers mapped out those ancient genetic sequences against our modern ones, they noticed an incredibly glaring anomaly.
Right, the distribution wasn't even.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this map anomaly is the foundation of the whole mystery. Geneticists refer to these anomalies as Neanderthal deserts.
Great term.
It really paints a picture. Imagine looking at a sprawling digital map of the modern human genome. You see little glowing indicators of Neanderthal DNA scattered all over the place, lighting up different chromosomes. But then you hit massive, striking blank spots where there is absolutely no Neanderthal DNA to be found. And the most famous, the most studied of these biological deserts is located on the X chromosome.
It is strikingly almost entirely devoid of Neanderthal traces.
Why would it be scattered everywhere else but missing there?
That is the exact question that puzzled evolutionary biologists for years. To understand why this 2026 study is such a breakthrough, we have to look at the historical context of the old theory that dominated scientific consensus.
Right, the old assumption.
For a long time, the prevailing thought regarding these deserts was purely biological. Scientists assumed that Neanderthal genes on the X chromosome must have been somehow toxic or highly incompatible with modern human biology.
The working hypothesis was that they caused severely reduced fertility, right?
Exactly. The logic dictated that if a hybrid child inherited those specific X chromosome genes, they would be less likely to survive or have children of their own.
So over thousands of years, natural selection would have naturally purged these incompatible genes from the human gene pool, leaving behind this vast genetic desert.
Which sounds incredibly definitive.
Yeah, a literal biological dead end. But here's where it gets really interesting. Science thrives on re-examining settled assumptions. Alexander Platt and the University of Pennsylvania team decided to look at this biological desert from a completely inverted angle.
They hypothesized that the old theory of a toxic chromosome was heavily biased because it was only looking at half the evolutionary picture.
Precisely. The methodology Platt's team utilized is what makes this paper so revolutionary.
They didn't just look at modern human DNA to see what we kept from Neanderthals. They looked back across the aisle to see what Neanderthals kept from us.
Yes.
They analyzed the ancient, fully sequenced genomes of 3 specific Neanderthal females. These are known to science by the caves where they were discovered: Altai, Chegorskaya, and Vindija.
Getting high coverage, uncontaminated genomic data from 50,000-year-old remains is a monumental feat of modern science in itself.
Truly. And they then compared those ancient Neanderthal genomes against the genomes of 73 modern human women from sub-Saharan Africa.
And the choice to use 73 modern women from sub-Saharan Africa is a really crucial part of the methodology, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It provides a robust statistical baseline because those specific populations have minimal to no Neanderthal ancestry. They essentially act as a pure Homo Sapiens control group for the comparison.
Exactly. You need that pure baseline to measure the genetic distance accurately. And the data they extracted from this comparison was a stunning reversal of expectations.
The mirror effect.
Yes, the researchers found a massive mirror effect. While modern humans have a distinct deficit, a desert of Neanderthal DNA on our X chromosome, the X chromosomes of those ancient Neanderthal females showed the exact opposite pattern.
The ancient Neanderthal X chromosomes were absolutely flooded with Homo sapiens DNA.
Flooded. The study revealed a massive 62% excess of modern human DNA on their X chromosomes compared to the rest of their genome.
That completely flips the script. This mirror image pattern, a desert on our side and a massive flood on their side, acts as a genetic smoking gun.
It entirely dismantles the old toxic gene theory.
Because if human and Neanderthal DNA were truly biologically incompatible on the X chromosome, you would expect to see massive deserts in both genomes.
Right, neither population would be able to hold on to the other's genetic material in that specific location.
The sheer fact that Neanderthals successfully retained a massive 62% excess of our X chromosome DNA proves that biology was not the barrier.
The barrier was mechanical and social. The realization that biology wasn't the limiting factor forces us to look at the mechanics of inheritance.
So since our listeners already understand the basic mechanics of how sex chromosomes are passed down, specifically how X-linked inheritance heavily weights maternal genetic flow, we can look at how Platt's team applied this.
Right. They built complex mathematical simulations to track these inheritance bottlenecks over tens of thousands of years. They modeled various interbreeding scenarios to see which one naturally produces the exact genetic distribution we see today: a desert in humans and a flood in Neanderthals.
And those mathematical models proved that the simplest, most mathematically sound explanation for the genetic data is a massive prehistoric sex bias.
The interbreeding between our ancestors wasn't symmetrical.
No, the models show it was predominantly Neanderthal males mating with Homo sapiens females.
Because a father only passes his X chromosome to his daughters, while a mother passes hers to all her children.
Right, so a pairing of a Neanderthal male and a human female severely restricts the flow of the Neanderthal X chromosome into the human population right from the first generation.
It acts as a compounding genetic bottleneck. If Neanderthal males are the ones primarily mating with human females, the Neanderthal X chromosome simply doesn't have the statistical opportunity to penetrate and spread widely through the rapidly growing human population.
Over thousands of generations, it remains rare, eventually fading out due to genetic drift and creating the desert we see today.
Conversely, the human mothers are continuously pumping their Homo sapiens X chromosomes into the descendants.
And over deep time, those hybrid descendants are being reabsorbed into Neanderthal populations, taking that flood of human X chromosomes with them.
Which perfectly explains the 62% excess Platt's team found in the Altai, Chegorskaya, and Vindija genomes.
The mathematical direction of the mating dictated the flow of the genes.
Precisely.
Wait, let me play devil's advocate here for a second. I know we are tracking the X chromosome, but if the data points to it being primarily Neanderthal males mating with human females, wouldn't we expect to see a massive influx of Neanderthal Y chromosomes in modern humans today?
Oh, that's a great point.
Because the Y chromosome is passed directly from father to son. Yet, from what I understand, the Neanderthal Y chromosome is entirely missing from modern human genomes. Doesn't that contradict the sex bias model?
That is an excellent, highly critical observation, and it is something geneticists have debated intensely.
It seems like a gap.
It does, but while the X chromosome data points to Neanderthal fathers, the missing Y chromosome doesn't invalidate that model. Rather, it highlights the extreme fragility of the Y chromosome over deep evolutionary time.
Okay, fragile how?
Well, the Y chromosome is much smaller, has significantly lower rates of recombination, and is highly susceptible to rapid genetic drift.
Ah, got it.
Furthermore, there is a biological concept known as Haldane's rule, which suggests that in hybrid populations, the sex that carries two different sex chromosomes in mammals, the XY males, is far more likely to experience sterility or specific immune incompatibilities.
So while Neanderthal males were successfully mating with human females and passing on their autosomal DNA and X chromosomes to their daughters, the specific hybrid sons carrying the Neanderthal Y chromosome may have faced distinct evolutionary disadvantages.
Exactly, causing that specific chromosome to be lost over millennia, even while the rest of the genetic legacy thrived.
So what does this all mean? We have this incredibly dense genomic data, these complex mathematical bottlenecks, and the reality of genetic drift.
Right.
But the biology is really just the evidence left behind at the scene. The real story here is about behavior. It forces us to completely rethink the relationship between our ancestors and Neanderthals on a deeply social level.
What's fascinating here is how thoroughly this dismantles the lingering 19th century myths of biological incompatibility.
Yeah, the old caveman tropes.
Exactly. For generations, pop culture and early anthropology painted Neanderthals as primitive, lumbering brutes, completely alien to our sophisticated Homo sapiens ancestors.
The assumption was always that even if interbreeding occurred, the offspring must have been evolutionary dead ends.
But the sheer abundance of human DNA in those Neanderthal remains proves the exact opposite. These pairings between Neanderthal men and human women were highly successful.
They produced healthy, fertile children who went on to have children of their own, passing those genes down for dozens, hundreds of generations.
The genetic exchange was deeply persistent.
And that level of persistence tells us that these two groups of ancient people were close. They weren't just passing each other in the night or engaging in brief, violent territorial clashes.
They were living together. They were raising children together in shared environments.
But as the science paper and the Habla summary both point out, while DNA is an incredible tool that tells us exactly what happened, the definitive mathematical proof of the sex bias, it really struggles to tell us why it happened.
The why is always the hardest part.
Why was the dynamic almost universally Neanderthal men entering into human social structures rather than the other way around?
That takes us right to the frontier of current anthropological debate. We have the genetic proof of the bias, but now we have to reverse engineer the social dynamics of the Pleistocene epoch.
Right.
The researchers and associated experts currently propose 3 highly compelling scenarios to explain this 50,000-year-old sex bias. You have to weigh the logic of each.
Okay, let's hear them.
The first scenario is rooted in migration patterns, specifically a concept known as male exogamy.
Right, and male exogamy is something we see widely distributed across different species.
We do. In many mammalian species, including various primates like gorillas, it is typically the males who leave their natal birth group upon reaching maturity to seek out new territories and new mates.
Which is a mechanism that naturally prevents inbreeding.
Exactly. If Neanderthal social structures operated on a principle of male exogamy, it is entirely plausible that young male Neanderthals were the ones venturing out, roaming across the vast Eurasian landscape.
And as they expanded their range, they would be the ones actively seeking out or naturally encountering the camps of Homo sapiens who are newly migrating into the region.
That makes perfect logistical sense from a geographical standpoint. The ones moving between the scattered populations are the ones facilitating the gene flow.
But the second scenario is perhaps even more intriguing to me because it centers entirely on human agency and choice. That scenario is social selection. This theory suggests that modern human women, or the complex social structures they were a part of, found Neanderthal males to be highly viable, attractive partners.
Yeah.
And to accept this, we have to aggressively strip away those old stereotypes.
Exactly. We have to look at the archaeological reality of who the Neanderthals were. They were an incredibly successful species in their own right.
Yeah.
They possessed immense physical strength, they were highly skilled apex hunters, they crafted complex Mysterian stone tools, they controlled fire, and they had survived in the incredibly harsh, freezing climates of Ice Age Europe for hundreds of thousands of years before we ever arrived.
Think about that from the perspective of a band of Homo sapiens. You are migrating out of Africa or the Levant, pushing into unfamiliar, freezing, wildly dangerous Eurasian territories.
It's terrifying.
In that context, a Neanderthal male isn't a brute. He is a premium partner.
He is someone who possesses deep local knowledge of the terrain, physical resilience to the cold, and the hunting skills necessary to help a family survive a brutal Ice Age winter.
It makes total sense that they would be welcomed into human groups.
It is a profound realization. Recognizing that the monumental choices made by our ancestors were likely driven by practical survival, social cohesion, perhaps genuine emotional connection, rather than some abstract concept of species boundaries.
They didn't have taxonomy.
Right. They didn't know they were a different biological species. They likely just saw another type of human who was exceptionally well adapted to the local environment.
Which brings us to the third scenario experts propose, which is less about individual choices and more about the macro reality of demographic pressure.
This is essentially a massive numbers game playing out over millennia.
Yes, the genetic clocks indicate that this specific pattern of intensive interbreeding peaked around 47,000 to 50,000 years ago.
And at that exact time, Homo sapiens populations were in a state of rapid exponential expansion out of Africa and across Eurasia.
While Neanderthal populations, by contrast, had always been relatively small, fragmented, and widely scattered due to the carrying capacity of their harsh environments.
As human groups grew larger, more socially dense, and more dominant in the landscape, Neanderthal males might have simply been absorbed into human communities far more frequently than the reverse.
A small, shrinking Neanderthal family group might not have had the resources to absorb human migrants, but a thriving, expanding human tribe could easily integrate wandering Neanderthal males.
The word absorbed feels like the critical hinge for this entire deep dive.
It really does. It completely shatters the old dramatic textbook narrative I remember learning. It was always framed as a harsh biological replacement. Humans moved in, we were smarter, our weapons were better, and we drove the Neanderthals to a rapid, violent extinction.
It was always a story of conquest.
Always.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the 2026 University of Pennsylvania study reinforces a vastly more nuanced and frankly more elegant reality.
No.
Neanderthals didn't just go extinct in the traditional catastrophic sense of a species being wiped off the evolutionary map.
They were genetically assimilated.
They dissolved into the much larger, rapidly expanding wave of humanity. Their lineage didn't end. It merged with ours.
Peaking around 50,000 years ago, those highly successful pairings between Neanderthal men and human women ensured that the Neanderthal legacy would survive indefinitely, woven directly into the biological fabric of the people who would go on to populate the entire globe.
It really shifts how you view our origins.
It does. Human history isn't just a ledger of dates, migrations, and better stone tools. According to this hard genomic data, our history is written in the language of bias.
Yes?
The genetic blueprint of every single person alive today is a vast, complex tapestry woven from multiple, incredibly diverse ancient lineages. And that tapestry was shaped, generation by generation, by the specific, highly personal social choices our ancestors made.
Who to trust when encountering a stranger in the Ice Age? Who to share a fire with? Who to build a family with?
Those ancient social choices dictated which genes survived to shape our immune systems today and which ones faded away into the deserts of our DNA.
It forces us to view ourselves not as a pure, isolated lineage that conquered the globe, but as a mosaic. A collaborative biological project that was heavily influenced, guided, and filtered by the complex social dynamics and mate selections of human women 50 millennia ago.
It gives you a totally different perspective the next time you look in the mirror or the next time your immune system kicks in to fight off a cold. You quite literally have those ancient social dynamics, those prehistoric meetings between different types of humans to thank for your biology today.
This raises an important question, though, one that steps outside the ancient past and requires us to look directly at our own time.
Okay.
If the social preferences, the migration habits, and the mating choices of human women 50,000 years ago were powerful enough to create genetic bottlenecks that permanently shaped our modern immune systems, our skin traits, and our biological vulnerabilities today.
Yeah.
What invisible social and cultural biases in our current modern world are actively writing the biological blueprint for the humans of the deep future?
Wow. That is an incredible angle to view this from. It really makes you look at modern urbanization, for example, completely differently.
Absolutely.
The cities we build, the geopolitical borders we draw, even the algorithms that dictate who we meet and interact with on dating apps, these aren't just cultural phenomena. They are literally the genetic bottlenecks of the year 52,000.
We are making choices right now that will echo in the cellular biology of humans tens of thousands of years from now.
Something very real to mull over on your commute today. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We love taking these complex scientific papers, pulling apart the data, and finding the profound human story hidden inside with you. Keep questioning the world around you, keep challenging those settled narratives, and we will catch you on the next one.